Hi, my name is Bill Russell. I'm from the UK Intellectual Property Office. That's part of the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills, part of the UK government. And I'm going to talk to you today about intellectual property, commonly known as IP. And effectively, I'm going to try and cover three things for you. What is IP? Why is it important to you as for your business? And what do you need to know now? Let me start off by telling you a little bit about what IP is. And not every company understands that. Basically, there are several types of IP, but I'm going to concentrate on the big four for you today. The first one is copyright. That covers things like published works, films, songs, and that's the thing that everyone knows with a little C with a circle on it. The second one is patents. That's inventions and processes, and that's the usual thing that people see with a little P and a little circle on it. But also we have designs, which are things like layouts and web pages, things like that. And lastly is trademarks, and trademarks are your branding, your logos, things that distinguish your business, and they quite often have a little T, M in a circle. But there are other forms of intellectual property, such as trade secrets and confidentiality agreements, which I'm not going to cover today. I'm going to concentrate very much on the big four. So one of the most important things you need to know is that most intellectual property is territorial in its nature. So if you've registered your intellectual property, be it your patent, your trademark, whatever it might be, in the UK, unless you've done something to actually protect it overseas, your rights will only cover you in the UK. So what you need to do is think in advance about how you're going to protect your IP if you're thinking of going overseas. Our intelligence tells us that many businesses, particularly SMEs, don't think about protecting their IP particularly well, and IP awareness amongst SMEs is quite low. For example, our research tells us that around 1 in 3 businesses actually consider IP theft to be one of their major concerns when trading overseas. However, despite that, only about 4% of businesses actually have an IP policy that protects them, either in the UK or overseas. And only about 15% of British businesses have registered trademarks overseas, and only 9% of British businesses have registered their patents overseas. So although IP theft is a big concern, not all businesses have done anything about protecting their IP. So the most important things to know is, as I say, IP rights are very territorial, and it's also very much a first-to-file system. What that means is, if you've filed your patents or your trademarks or your copyright in the UK, that will apply to the UK, that's fine. But when you're going overseas, if you haven't already patented or trademarked your designs or your brand logos, you may well find that somebody has quite legitimately registered in your name, or what you consider to be your name, in that overseas market. And that has two major impacts. One is that when you arrive in that country, be it India or China or elsewhere, you may well find there is already a company trading under what you consider to be your company logo, your company name. And you can either have to fight that through the court system to get the logo back, or you have to pay. The other implication may well be that that company in India or China or elsewhere may be trading globally, say on the internet, and their reputation, their quality of their products may well be impacting upon your reputation and your name in other markets. So that's something you really need to be aware of, and is something which is very important if you're thinking about trading overseas, is to get your branding, get your patents registered as early as possible. I would say there are probably 5 big things that you need to be aware of before you consider trading overseas. The first one is to do your due diligence test. Build up a relationship with people. Trust is important. I wouldn't send my blueprints off to somebody overseas unless I actually trusted them. But we do hear stories of that happening, that people send their intellectual property, be it blueprints or whatever, overseas, and then, surprise, surprise, they find they've lost it. The second but really important thing here is, and this is something I'll stress again and again, is that prevention is far, far better than cure. Getting your intellectual property registered early before you go overseas is much quicker and easier and cheaper than trying to recover it later. That can often be very, very frustrating. The third tip I would give is, if in doubt, seek professional advice. And there are many pieces out there who can give advice and help and support be it UK or UKTI, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the UK Intellectual Property Office, the professional legal services. There are many people who can help you. If in doubt, seek that professional advice. Fourth is, understand the value of your intellectual property. If it was stolen, if it was taken, if it was exploited, how much would that be worth to you? That tells you whether it's worth protecting, but also tells you how much effort you need to do in actually preventing it being stolen in the first place. How much am I prepared to spend in order to protect that asset? And in many cases, such as trademarks, the company name, the company reputation might be your most important asset. So think about its value. The fifth thing is, if things go wrong, don't resort immediately to court action. That can be quite expensive, it can be very time consuming, it can be very frustrating. Consider other routes, such as mediation or arbitration. We often find that's quicker and cheaper and just as effective. The particular things you need to know about India are, although they have a fairly well regulated and structured legal system, it can be quite slow. The other thing is that enforcement in India is less prevalent, less effective than it is in the UK. IP awareness amongst the public in India and in the authorities in India, particularly the enforcement authorities, IP does not figure very high, and therefore you are working quite hard to get people to understand that taking your intellectual property, the impact that will have for your particular business. Trademark squatting, this is where somebody either knowingly or wantingly registers your trademark in their name, is increasingly an issue in India. It's also an issue in China and other markets, and that can have a profound impact on your business. When you arrive in that market expecting to trade under your name, your logo, your reputation that you build up over years, you find that somebody is already operating there. And we know of instances, for example, with beverage companies and others, where they've arrived into a market and somebody is not only operating under their name, but has products that look and sound and feel and taste very similar to theirs. And that can be a big issue for you. The other thing you need to know about India is that the process, although good, is very slow. Patent registration in the UK takes a couple of years. In India, it can take up to 5 years. So you need to think about how you can protect your intellectual property in that intervening period. And there are things you can do to help with that. So what's help is available? Well, there's lots of help available from the UK IPO. We have some very basic information that's available on our website. We have a leaflet called My IP, which is available. We also have what we call IP business guides, which give you a much greater in-depth understanding of the issues and the differences between the UK system and the Indian system. We also have new web pages that are due to go live in the next couple of months, which will have things like do's and don'ts, frequently asked questions, and links to important people who can help you either understand the IP issues or address them when things go wrong. Lastly, what the IPO has done is we actually placed a member of our staff, that's a member of the UK IPO staff, in New Delhi, in the High Commission based there. And they are an Indian IP expert who knows the local culture, knows the local laws, the local regulations. They can give practical help and support. Their name is Anshika Jha, and she can be contacted at the British High Commission in New Delhi. In summary, I would say the things you need to know are India is pretty much a well-functioning system. They have the laws in place, but it can be long, it can be slow, and it can be frustrating. Enforcement is an issue, and you need to think about that. So the way to avoid most of those issues is to register your rights early and make sure that you have a good local lawyer available to you, and not a lawyer which is essentially UK-based, but somebody who is based in country, somebody who knows the local culture, the local systems, the local ways of navigating. Okay, IP in India is registered in much the same way as it is in the UK. Trademarks, for example, there are 5 places you can register your trademarks in India. They're fairly well known. You can look on the websites for the Indian IP system. You can find it relatively straightforward. There are 5 centres. You can register at any one of those centres, and it covers you for the whole of India. And it takes about 2 years for that to happen, so it's quite a long time, but that will only cover you for 10 years, but you can take it after that, you can extend it. Patents, again, you can register online. There's a system readily available through the internet. Thing for patents, it can be quite a complicated system because there are lots of different classes. I would definitely recommend engaging a local IP specialist lawyer who can help you navigate that system. That's the most important thing, I would think. The biggest problem that most companies face is not around patents, it's around copyright protection and trademark protection. Copyright protection can be anything. It could be your training manuals, your literature, your operating systems, and it's not protected. Quite often they'll put it on your website and then it's quite available to anybody else. Now these are protected by international law, but getting that protected and enforced in country can be quite difficult. So I'd certainly recommend for copyright, if you're thinking of operating in India, you can register your copyright. That will help you enforce it if things do go wrong later. Trademarks, as I said, that is quite often companies' biggest IP issue. It is your name, it is your brand, it's your company's reputation. That is the thing which most companies come to us with concerns, not just in India, but also in China and elsewhere. That's the thing that most companies don't think about when they think about IP. They generally think about patents and inventions. Trademarks is probably the most important part for many businesses, not all businesses. So doing something to protect that in advance of going overseas can be quite often the most important thing you can do. It's relatively straightforward. It's, as I say, it can be quite a time-consuming system. It takes about 2 years for it to do. So if you think about it, if you're thinking of going to India in a couple of years' time, now's the time to be thinking about registering your trademark so that when you arrive in India, either your trademark is already registered or it's about to be registered, and then you're ready to go.